and gentlemen, welcome back to the Lawn Care CEO podcast, where lawn care guys learn to be leaders. My name is Dan Rounds. I'm the head coach of the Lawn Care CEO, joined by the CEO of the Lawn Care CEO, Aaron Sutton-Field. And on today's episode, ladies and gentlemen, straight out of Augusta, Georgia, the master of building lawn care, fertilization, weed control businesses, a guy who ran 3 Scott's Miracle-Gro franchises and said, nah, I can build something better, and launched Lawn Ace in the fall of 2019 and has blown past every projection, multimillion-dollar lawn care, fertilization, weed control business. Please welcome to the stage, Kyle Flanagan. Kyle, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Is it awesome living in Augusta, Georgia? I think we just got off the Masters, and I literally was thinking of you. I'm like, wait, I could live there, right?
Yeah, it's awesome living in Augusta, Georgia until about 2 weeks before the tournament. And then and I assume it's kind of like living at the beach and then spring break comes to town. So If you live here, you kind of want to just leave that time of year. So everybody thinks you're really lucky to live here and you got the tournament and all that. Most of us locals are gone. We want nothing to do with the place for that 2 or 3 week period surrounding it. But it's awesome to watch on CBS, and we just enjoy it that way.
But they know a little bit about grass there for sure, right?
They know a little bit. And I'll tell you what, when you've got a career lawn care guy who goes out to the course and goes, man, I really have to question if what I'm walking on is real. That's a big I mean, there are some places out there where you almost would go, well, surely this has to be AstroTurf. Surely this here where everybody is walking does not look this good. And yet it does.
We need to do, Aaron, a podcast episode where we just go interview whoever's in charge of the grounds at the Masters.
Good luck.
We have to have more than tens of listeners before I think they'll accept our invite, right?
Well,
I don't know if they would talk to us.
People call me all the time. They go, do you have, can you get us tickets? I'm like, you have no idea. You think too highly of me. And you don't think high enough of that club if you think you're going to get tickets from a guy like me or anybody. So,
yeah, right. Well, we're super happy to have you, Kyle, on our podcast today. Kyle, give us your story. I gave a brief introduction, but I think you have a really interesting story arc here. Over 20 years in the industry.
Yeah. So I'll try to shorten it as much as possible, but the shorter version is, so I was in 2001, I went to college at the University of Georgia. I was actually a political science major, pre-law. I had every intention of going to law school. I'm obviously not an attorney at this point, so that didn't work out. But it's interesting how it happened. But I was in school, had every intention of going to law school when I was an undergrad. And I started working for a weed control fert company. If you're anywhere in the region, you would know them. It's King Green. They've actually recently been acquired by private equity, but I worked for King Green at the time. I think they had 4 offices, Gainesville, Atlanta area, but they had an office over in Athens, which is where I went to school. So when I moved to Athens, I moved there with about $1,000 in my bank account. My parents did not support me through school, paying my way. I paid most of my way through school on my own, so I had to work, student loans, whatever. So when I moved to Athens, that was back in the day when you found a job in the paper. So I went to Kroger, I bought a newspaper, and I found a job listing for a spray tech, and it paid $9 an hour, which was insane.
$9 whole dollars. Wow.
I was like, I don't know what a spray tech is, but I will do anything for $9 an hour. I had golf. My dad's a golf course superintendent. Was a superintendent my whole life. Is retired now. So I grew up in the green industry, never in our segment of it, but I called up. I got an interview. My former boss took a chance on me, and I worked for King Green for several years and loved it. It was a great company. I had a great boss that really taught me so much there about the industry, and I really just fell in love with the industry. It is a much longer story as to how a lot of things worked out, but in a nutshell, just for sake of time, I eventually went out on my own. And while I was still in school, just again,
talk me through a little bit that moment.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of our listeners are that guy where they just are at that side hustle moment where they're like, okay, maybe we're going to take that leap. Talk a little bit about for you. I mean, did you have family? Were you married? Like what was going on then when you made that?
So I loved working with King Green. I had some time in there. I really loved the industry. I grew to love it. I never had intentions of making a career out of it. But I really had gotten to love it. And I feel like the Lord was just kind of showing me that the path that I was on was not, and again, that probably is a longer story for another day, but I feel like the Lord was just kind of showing me, hey, maybe this isn't the path you're supposed to go. And he was closing some doors and opening some other ones there. A service manager role came available that I applied for. I was still in school at the time. This was over a summer, and I was kind of considering just my path in general there at that time. That was the summer between my junior and senior year of college. So I was just kind of, I said, the door's opening, let's see where it goes. I did not get that job. And actually the person who got the job, was a guy who started a couple of months before me. His name was Jerry Tomlin. He, great guy. I worked with him for a long time.
I was gonna chew out Jerry Tomlin.
Yeah, no, Jerry. I loved working with Jerry. Great guy, and to the best of my knowledge, I believe he is still there to this day. So they definitely made the right choice with him. He was fantastic. So they made a great choice with him. I had a good conversation with some of the powers that be over there when that happened, and they were very upfront with me and just said, hey, we really would love for you to stay around. But at the time, King Green really was a great company. People didn't leave. Once they got into positions, they didn't leave. Yeah. They moved up, but they really didn't leave.
I mean, you were making $9 an hour. How could you leave?
I know. I was making $9 an hour. Yeah. So it was, and some insurance, which was really huge back then for a guy who was about to get married. So anyways, they were very upfront with me and just said, hey, we really would love for you to stay around here, but in all honesty, there is probably not something that's going to open up anytime soon. People just do tend to stay with us for a while.
Yeah.
And again, almost 20 years later, Jerry is still there. So it was probably a good decision that I didn't wait around. But I ended up going out on my own. So at the time I'm engaged to my now wife, we were married in 2007. So I was engaged. I still continued to work there for a little bit of time. My wife and I get married. I stayed there. She was in her last semester of undergrad.
Of course. You're like if you're going to start a little side hustle, do it during the honeymoon phase of marriage.
Yes.
Because everyone's happy. Everything will be fine.
Yes. That's
and so 2007, more or less, we're kicking this thing off.
Yeah.
How long did it take before it became the main hustle? And then how long did it take before it really took off? Because you built a couple of multi-million-dollar companies here. So just a real brief, like how quick did we get to how long did it take? What was the journey?
Yeah. So at the time too, so when I was working at King Green, I was doing some landscape maintenance work as well. So we were kind of at the time I started off I was working at King Green, and then my side hustle was kind of just, I had some apartment complexes, one of which I lived in at the time that I worked for a property manager, keeping up a few apartment complexes and things in Athens, a lot of student housing, right? So that's how I was making money on the side. So obviously working at King Green, I didn't directly compete with them. When I decided to leave King Green and focus on doing my own thing in the weed control fertilization space, that's why I left, so as not to compete with them directly. So for a little while, our main revenue stream was landscape maintenance, and then we built the fertilization company on that, starting from there and just building it from that.
At what point did you make the move to where, because I know that you got to the point where you're only fertilization and weed control. And I do see this probably pretty common, Aaron, where it's probably a little easier to get the maintenance work. It's a little easier to get to nice revenue numbers in the maintenance world,
Yeah.
but with an understanding that the real value probably is in the fertilization and weed control. Aaron went through this transition. Talk about your transition from maintenance, kind of an do it all guy just to make ends meet, and then transitioning to fertilization weed control only.
Yeah, so for us, that was through acquisition, because it is, and you see this a lot. You see a lot of guys who do, especially who don't do a lot of landscape installs. You see a lot of guys who do maintenance, and they go, well, I want to add weed control and fert as a revenue stream. I don't think a lot of people understand how hard that is to do, to build that from scratch. I mean, we're talking about going from doing some commercial properties that are bringing in thousands of dollars a month in revenue. And even if you're sitting at a 10% profit on it, you're still making some good money on these properties, and they're solid contracts. So you're going from that to doing $40 and $45 and $50 yards that with a lot more specialized skill, different equipment, different insurance and licenses. Just it's a whole different. Definitely a little bit of vertical integration there, but not as much as people think sometimes. And I mean, as we all know, it's really hard are you making money? Money on 50 customers, on 100 customers? If you're going out there and doing that, versus if you were to go get 50 new customers in landscape maintenance, your company is just doing fantastic. So it's just kind of a different way to do it. So for us, we did it through acquisition. So we started kind of organically with our current maintenance customers in Athens, kind of grew from there, just word of mouth. Again, we're talking a time really where social media, back then it was just for colleges. Facebook was out, it had just come out, but it was only for college students. It hadn't gone to the general population yet. So really there was no social media marketing or anything. Yellow Pages was still a thing. That's where you would do your advertising, but it was so expensive, we couldn't afford it.
AAA lawn care, yeah.
I mean, we really we're door hangers, like sticking door hangers and flyers on cars or whatever we could do, just really old school back then. And so our big growth into it, what really propelled us into it was an acquisition. So we started doing that in Athens. My accountant, we were probably 2 years into it, and my accountant calls me one day and says, "Hey, I've got a Scott's franchise over in Augusta, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours up the road." I said, I've got this Scott's franchise over there. The owners of it owned several other very successful businesses. They've always been successful with everything they've done. The Scott's franchise was not doing well. And he said, "Look, I really think," he said, "I'm bringing it to you because it's something that you're doing well at. They're really not, but it's just because they don't understand the industry. It's not a bad business. It's just that they don't understand that industry is not like these other industries that they're in." So he said, "On paper, it looks awful. Nobody would buy it. They're probably 60 days or less from closing the doors. But I think there's an opportunity here, and I'd like for you to go look at it and tell me if you're interested, and I can kind of set something up there." So that's kind of what propelled us into it, was acquiring that, and that took a little bit of time.
How many clients did you acquire in that fell swoop?
I can't remember how many clients we had. It was about $400K in revenue. So
a good chunk.
Probably, yeah. A little less than, you probably in that market, you might have been 500 to 800.
We were probably, I was going to say, a little under 1,000 probably. Yeah. We were probably sitting at
out of curiosity, how much did you pay for it?
So we paid. So let me give you a little bit of the back. So I don't know what we ended up paying for it because of I'd have to go back and so we paid about 70 cents on whatever the revenue was at the time. I think it was $430K in revenue, and we paid like 68 cents on the dollar for it. So somebody with a calculator can do some math for me on that.
Yeah. Gotcha.
We ended up, and this really was one thing that I love. So I knew one of the owners of the business casually, did not know him really well at the time, although we got to know each other really well over the years, and I still stay in touch with him to this day. He kind of became a mentor to me. He's just a very wise person, has a lot of business experience behind him. So he, one thing that he always taught me, and I feel like definitely worked out here, is he said, when you walk away from a closing table, he's like, the real win is if the buyer and the seller both walk away happy. Like if the seller is like, oh yeah, I got rid of some junk, great. Or if the buyer's like, oh, I really got one over on him. He said, that's not really your goal. Like the goal should be that everybody walks away happy together. I know Aaron does this in his company. We win together, we lose together. That's a big focus in our company to this day. And it was one of those things.
And Aaron, I'll interrupt just a second. Yeah. Aaron, you've learned this lesson with some other clients that you've worked with where it was a good deal for the seller, bad deal for the buyer. And even that is bad, even if you're the seller.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're selling something that doesn't win for the buyer, I hope you get a check up front, because it's going to be difficult to collect if they can't win. And yeah, I've seen that many times. When we got out of lawn care, for example, I really didn't try to sell it. I had some value. I could have sold it and put a little bit of money in our back pocket. For me, I didn't feel like I had a great business. I felt like I had a job for somebody, and I just kind of felt a little guilty. But here's the biggest one for me. When we sold the lawn mowing part of our division, I didn't want my energy tied up in it anymore. It had exhausted all of my energy and taken me away from this thing that was more valuable. And so for me, I didn't sell our mowing business because I just felt like it wasn't super valuable, and I thought it was going to take a lot of my energy if I made a transaction, right? I'd have to support the buyer, I'd have to support the clients. Hopefully they kept the clients, and I was going to have a lot of things out of my control that were going to just zap my energy. And I think it was a wise decision for me at that time. But yeah, I think, Kyle, you spent about $270,000 roughly, at 68%. And, you probably spent somewhere around $300 to $350 a client. But you got a really nice foundation. And Dan, I was kind of thinking as Kyle was talking about this, I kind of did it the opposite. I came home from a conference with John Spatoshnik, decided I needed to go into lawn residential services. I did mowing and fertilization, but we really grew it organically. We started from scratch. We didn't purchase anyone. We just took our time. And in hindsight, I would have gone 100% into fertilization weed control and not taken the mowing. Probably helped a little bit in the early days that we offered mowing, and we got clients because we mowed, and it made our marketing better. When you have multiple services to market, those are easier to get some wins with marketing on. But we just had a podcast, shameless plug, a few weeks ago with Will Hall, who went from 80 to 800 clients in 2 years, or doing it pretty much organically. But both ways work. Like if you've got an opportunity to go buy something and you can financially do it, I'm a big fan of that. If it's the right deal.
It always does end up being a deal like the one you described, Kyle, which is like the deal where it's like, this is a pretty special circumstance, right? If that Scott's franchise was clobbering it, they were doing great. You couldn't have afforded it, and probably shouldn't have afforded it, right? It was the fact that it was a little bit of a special circumstance. And that's usually when I see these kinds of deals work, where everybody's happy in the end. It's because there's some kind of special circumstance where the buyer is in need or the seller's in need, and the buyer can get it at the price agreed upon. Generally, the rule is people overvalue their businesses when they go to sell them. And so it's hard to come to agreement unless there is some kind of special circumstance.
Well, and I think what we need, and you're right, Dan, like that, what we needed in that too, it wasn't just that they needed to offload something, but we also, you got to figure that I was roughly 3 years into the business at this point. Who is giving money to a guy who's, 23 at the time, maybe, with basically nothing to my name, and you're over here. I couldn't have walked into a bank and said, hey, I want to go borrow $300,000 to purchase a failing company. So it really worked out good, and they couldn't have sold that failing company because of the books. So it really worked out good for both. They were able to, so they owner financed it for me, which was fantastic. So now we're starting to build some history that we can take down the road and actually take to a bank and say, look, now we've got this company that we turned around from this to this, revenues, profits, all that, like good books, good solid books. They also were able to make some money off the interest. So even though if that company been doing well, they could have made more, but they made money on, we financed it for, I think we did like a 15-year note on it with the intention of paying it off earlier, but their goal was to make good money and interest over time. We had a fair interest rate at the time on it, so they were happy with that. I was happy with it. I would have paid interest at a bank anyways, so it really was a win-win. The only reason we paid it off significantly early only because of the Scotts True Green merger that happened down the road that we can get to. But that it really was a win-win. When we walked away from the attorney's office at the closing table, I think they were very happy with it, and so was I, because they really were going to shut the doors in the next 60 days or so. And I couldn't have gone and bought a business with that kind of revenue if I wanted to at that point in my life and in my career. So, both of us needed something from the other one, and both of us got, walked away, I think, with smiles on our faces. I mean, the fact that we still all talk to this day, we send Christmas cards to each other. We have a very good relationship to this day, and that's one of those things that I learned from it. And it spiraled into some other things. When we bought our next franchise, guess who was able to go to the bank and now have some history behind us, not just with paying some money back, but showing a turnaround because the second franchise we bought was a similar thing. It was on the other side of the state over in Columbus.
Did you buy, because you did three of the Scotts franchises, did you buy all three?
So we bought two Scotts franchises. So we bought the one in Augusta. When I bought that, not to overlook this, so when I bought that, the one caveat to it, because we were entering a franchise system, was I could not do anything on my own anymore. So our company in Athens had to sell, which I was happy to do, because we really were still, the majority of the revenue at the time was still from mowing. So, and this was a way for us to break into the weed control fert side of it. So I did have to sell the company in Athens because of it, and strictly focus on this. Again, we made that strategic decision to do it. So we owned the company in Augusta about 2 years.
So that was your leap, right? Your leap was, I bought a franchise. It's like, honey, I bought a zoo. It's like, I bought a franchise and therefore I have to offload all of my maintenance contracts. Yeah. I am now in the game. Kind of overnight, you're in the game. Yes. So I want to fast forward the story just a little bit. Yeah. So I want to compare these two beginnings, because you had that beginning. Then, if I understand the story right, you grew that to a level, eventually sold out of that business, had a 3-year non-compete, and then it was like, all right, I'm going to start something else. And I'm going to get back in the game. First of all, why in the world would you want to, now that you're wealthy beyond your wildest imaginations? I'm kidding. I know it's never that, but, and then how did you start differently with the experience you had, what you've been through?
Couple things real quick. Kyle, I mean, the merger with Scotts and True Green was not Kyle's decision. So
that's a good point.
Kyle, you've shared this with me. You were forced to sell because the corporate sold, and even though you were a franchise, you were part of that, and they controlled that, right? Which, I mean, it was not a horrible deal for y'all, but you weren't ready to sell at that point, right? So I think that's important to kind of know in the story.
Yeah, I would have been in my early 30s at that point when that happened. So, had it happened 30 years down the road, it probably would have been great. It was great money, but again, what are you going to do when you're in your early 30s? You got to, God willing, a few more years to work, So,
sure.
And we had no control over that. Just as with most franchises, even outside of our industry, if the franchisor sells, you're selling. So. That's and it was actually a lesson I learned, when you're part of any franchise, or most, I should say most, I don't say, when you're part of most franchises, I didn't realize how, I always thought that we owned a business, we really didn't. When somebody my wife and I were actually on an airplane going to New York for our anniversary one year, and we touched down in New York, and I had, I don't know, a dozen voicemails from people. And it's when they announced that Scott's was going to be selling to True Green.
Sure.
So we spent the majority of our anniversary trip trying to figure out what that meant that year. But it was a good lesson to learn was, really for me, I look at it, and I don't think by the way, I'm a big proponent of franchising in a lot of ways. If I had to do all over again, I would still do it the same way. What we were able to do through them, what I was able to learn, some of the perks with it, I wouldn't do it any other way at the time. But I did learn that we really didn't own that business. We might have owned the corporation that ran the franchise, but when somebody can take that from you like that, that's the reason why when we went back into it, we were like, we're going to go in as an independent. We had several other franchises reach out to us and try to sell us franchises at that point, but it just wasn't something that we were interested in. So we had already done this a couple of times at that point, and found a way to get through our non-compete. With our team. So when we went back, we decided to go back as an independent, which we've done for the last 6 years.
Yeah. So 2019, you start. What's the journey from 0 to $1 million for you? Because I know you mentioned it before the call. You're like, we felt like we wanted to get there quick because we had probably team that we'd used at Scott's that were still loyal and wanted to be a part of what we're doing. Talk about the journey from 0 to $1 million.
So a little quick backstory to get you there, just so
Yeah.
To paint an accurate picture of it. So when we sold our franchises, we had one in Augusta and one over on the other side of the state in Columbus. We sold both of those to True Green in that deal, and with that, it triggered a 3-year non-compete. Again, had I not had the core leadership team that I had, probably wouldn't have been as big of a deal. But we always had the intention of going back into business the day that non-compete expired. So the big task was, what do we do for 3 years? When we sell, what do we do for 3 years? Thankfully, I got along very well with the VP of acquisitions over at True Green, and we were actually able to work. They had a small Scott's franchise down in southern Alabama that just was not big enough for them to really make sense to do anything with. So the offer he made me, he said, well, hey, I'll tell you what. Why don't you buy this thing? Why don't you grow it over the next 3 years? We'll buy it back the day before your non-compete expires, and now you've got something to do with your leadership team. And that's kind of how that worked out. So we sold our Scott's franchises. The next day, we purchased this small True Green franchise in Dothan, Alabama. We sent one of our service managers down there. He moved down there to run it. And then we did all of our operations, as we always do, because we were used to running things remotely at that point.
So I want to pause here. I want to pause here for a principled lesson here. Because I'm hearing this happen again and again, and maybe you can comment on, if it's just God's good grace to you or something. But it seems like at every turn, it's like, here you go, Kyle. Here's a perfect opportunity for you. Here you go, Kyle. Here's a perfect opportunity to you. And I can't, I'm imagining that it's maybe some version of, one of your superpowers is just building great relationships, connecting with people, caring for people in a Christian way, and trying to do right by people. I feel like I saw that in the podcast with Will Hall too, where he was like, man, I just try to be good to people. And somehow that all comes back to me, not because that's not why I'm good to people, but it has this really great karmic effect. Talk about, how you would explain these kind of perfect opportunity moments that popped up along the journey.
I do think that just as a believer, this is not just something I say lightly. Like I do think that is God's provision for us. I think that He, it is something. One thing I pray about on a consistent basis is that He would provide work and that we would be willing to do it with excellence, even whether we like that work or not. And He's always done that. And we've had some work that I have not liked to do over the years, but we have always prayed for that. And when He provides the work, we have to be willing to do it. I share that with my team as well. So I do think that's a big part of that. I think he's always provided for us. I think as far as the relationships go too, it's just something that, I hear people, especially now, and this was, it used to be at conferences, you'd hear this. And now, in the social media world that we live in today, you hear this a lot. Well, what's the secret sauce? What's the secret sauce? I don't know. I'm kind of old school, but I just don't think there is much. I think it is doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, treating people right with respect, the things that I was taught growing up. Aaron knows this about me. I'm an old school guy. I mean, he referenced earlier, he's gotten a couple of handwritten notes from me. I still write handwritten notes. I seal them with a wax stamp on the back. But I genuinely love doing it. I don't do it because maybe that relationship will benefit me down the road. I genuinely love and care about people.
It's like hanging
awesome.
That's my hand
wall back there.
So that's not all Kyle, but I do. If you write me in the letter, I do hang it in my office. But he does have the cool little stamp. I'm actually a little jealous of that. That was actually a nice touch. A little wax stamp.
It's fun for me. I like doing it. I just think that when I'm really just not a big look. I like money as much as the next guy. I like being able to. I like being able to have a little bit of freedom there or whatever, but it is not really what gets me going. Like people have always, Aaron and I talked about that early on when we started working together. It's really all been about people. And this is the deal when people look at that secrets. What's the secret sauce? How do you get them to feel like you care about them? You have to do it. Like there is no how do I make them
you
feel
care
like
about
I
them?
care?
That's how you get them to feel
you
like
care about
you
people
care about
you don't.
them. Yeah.
like that's it. So to me, when I've built relationships with people, it's not for any reason other than just trying to be a kind human, trying to do the things, trying to help. Look, if I want people, if I would want somebody to help me in a situation, how am I not willing to help another person in that situation? Yeah. So when I've got and oddly enough, it's funny. Even like the VP of acquisitions over at True Green, there were a lot of hard feelings towards him from a lot of Scott's franchise owners. I was just never that way. And it wasn't because I was trying to be better than anybody or anything like that. It was just, hey, I think a lot of people forgot this guy was a human being and they treated him in a little bit different way. And to this day, I actually had lunch with the guy. He was in town a couple of weeks ago, called me up. We had lunch a couple of weeks ago and we're not best friends or anything like that, but we've maintained a relationship and catch up a couple of times a year or whatever, and for no reason other than just to do it. There's nothing on the horizon. I'm not looking to sell anything like that. He's not even with True Green anymore. He finally retired last year. But I don't know. There's something about I love sometimes I heard this a long time ago. The efficiencies are in the inefficiency, right? Like so yeah, it's quicker to shoot off it's quicker to shoot off an email blast, or it's quicker to call somebody when they're not going to pick up and you can leave them a voicemail, or whatever the case. But I don't know, to me, if I say I care about people, that means I've got a member of my team that they had their second baby yesterday. I mean, I'm telling you, I don't know if I'm as happy as they are, but when he sent me those pictures of his new baby, I was genuinely like, man, I love to see. And I've seen the growth in this guy over the last couple of years, and just to see his family, like it gets me going, But there's no secret sauce to it. It's just
Well, if we're going to call the secret sauce like being a good human and a good Christian, then that's the secret sauce. And I've always grappled with this because I'm a very strategic person, and because I know that it does yield results, I have to really work hard not to do it for the results, right? To stay in a lane that isn't selfish, because it works, by the way.
Yeah.
Like there are people who leverage it in a way that still works for them, but isn't genuine. And so you have to be genuine with it. And by the way, let me put a pin in the prayer that is, provide work for me. And even if it's work I don't want or don't like, I will do it with excellence. Like to me, that might be the story, like at the end of the day, is a willingness to do work we don't want to do with excellence. Because it's easy to do the work you do want to do. It's a little bit like this is going to be like a little Bible school class here, but it's like, because it's the same principle, right? Where it's like, it's easy to love your neighbor, but you got to love the guy who isn't nice to you, right? You got to love the guy who maybe wronged you a little bit, and that's where the magic is. And it's the same thing here. It's like, it's easy to do the work you love. It's the work that we don't want to do, that's grindy or hard, or maybe I'm not a math guy and I got to go do the math stuff, or I'm not a computer guy and I got to do the computer stuff. It's that willingness to show up with excellence to whatever work the good Lord puts in front of you.
I hope that other people, that is always my hope, that like other people can, and by the way, I'm a very flawed human being. So just to put that out there, very flawed human being. So I'm by no means imperfect at it, but I hope that I hope that people can go out there and see that, because how I learned it was I saw it from my dad. My dad had a very difficult job his entire career. He did it with excellence. He did it quietly and humbly. He never, I don't recall a time, I'm sure he has complained about it. I don't recall a time of him complaining about it. He was grateful for the work that he had, and there were plenty of good things with it, and there were plenty of very hard and negative things, I am sure, with it. And he just modeled that. And I saw it like my whole life growing up. Like we never talked about it. He modeled it. And it was such an encouragement for me to see that. And I always said, man, if I can do that, especially when I went out on my own and created I remember the first person I ever hired. We still keep in touch to this day. And he, I remember telling Lynn, my wife, I remember saying, I want to create a place where people, yes, we'd all rather be at the beach on a Monday morning probably, but if you have to go to work, I want to create a place where we're the place you want to come. Like
yes.
where you can come in and it's going to be hard work, but we can do it with excellence, and we can do it with support, and we can do it as a team. But I just saw him model that for all those years, and I was like, man, if I could even model half of that, and somebody see that, and then them go model it. I don't listen to a lot of people. I just watch people. And I watched him do that, and there's a couple other good examples in my life for sure now that I've been surrounded with some really cool people that I've had that opportunity. But my dad was that first one, and I saw it for years and years and years like that. Yep. And I was just like, man, if I could do half of that.
I just want to make sure everyone listening hears the sermon here that's being taught. Not that we're trying to be preachy, but just like the idea that says, hey, put first things first. Like those who put revenue and money first probably will get some, but it will eventually doesn't have the foundation it needs to turn into something amazing. I think that when we put first things first, God, family, purpose, our team, and the people that we work for, and creating an environment for them that can be successful and where they can be successful and powerful, like that's where the magic is. And I'm reminded of the quote Zig Ziglar, who said, money is not what matters in life, but try living without it. It's like, and we need to have the business foundations to allow us to go do that great work, right? So it's putting those things first, and then the money, the reason, the rationale behind creating a profitable business, the rationale behind creating something that really works, good systems, great business, scalable, profitable, is so that we can do all these other things that are our true priorities.
Yeah, Aaron and I were talking about that earlier today. Just how there have been years where where we have been a slave to the business. We have worked for the business, and it is really nice to finally come. And sometimes that's just how it is. There are seasons of business where that's just going to be how it is. But it is really nice to get to a point where now the business works for you, and not the other way around.
And that season of business is like the startup phase, right? Dan and I have been going through the startup phase of the Lawn Care CEO, and it's put your head down and grind, and and work a bunch of hours and invest a lot of money. And there's times where Dan and I had our one-on-one this week, and we were kind of like, we've reinvested a lot of money in the last year that we could have taken some nice trips on or done some things right. And so that I think it's important for the audience to hear that if you're in the startup phase, you should be grinding. You should be tired. You should be feeling some pain of that. And Kyle has gone through that multiple times. And then the reward is, if you do it correctly and you have something that's valuable to other people and you build the team correctly and you believe in the things like Kyle does, and Dan and I preach a lot and we try to live as well. If you actually believe in this culture, not just check the box for the culture, then it will yield some really great results, which allow you to eventually kind of pull away and have some of that time back, right? Because I don't want our audience to a lot of guys are in the startup phase hearing us, and we're kind of talking level 300 and 400 stuff here a little bit. And I think it's important to understand that you mentioned you will work hard. This is a hard, and I think we should transition a little bit here to Kyle. You can be doing things really well, and then some things can change, and now we're back in the business running it, right? I've gone through that multiple times at my lawn care company, and sort of doing it a little bit right now, actually. We're changed some leadership at our company this year, and, I'm training that leadership and, and working through that. But Kyle, it comes to mind as you had a general manager a few years ago who decided to leave. And, the systems had kind of been built around that, and that pulled you back into the business, if I remember correctly. And so there's seasons of the business where, we can be pulled back in pretty quickly, right?
I think that's a good point. I mean, and again, to be clear, we're talking almost 20 years in right now, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we need not miss for the first almost 10 years, the first couple of years of the business, I made $400 a week before taxes. So, we were living on, we legitimately every single week we would buy like a 48 pack of hot dogs from Sam's and cheese and like rice and noodles. We scraped by on nothing for a very long time. And then a few years into it, when we started to make a little bit of money, we reinvested all of it.
By the way, fond memories of hot dogs and ramen noodles.
Yeah. To this day, I still like hot dogs. I just buy good ones now. I cannot eat the cheap hot dogs anymore. I'm in my 40s now. I can't eat the cheap hot dogs anymore and not suffer for it. So, but yes.
But my point is like those aren't bad times necessarily.
They in some ways, my wife and I talk about this on a regular basis. I think people think that when you get to a certain point, and I was guilty of this. You're always like, well, when this happens, then
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I get out of debt, then when I get my profit margin to 20%, then when I get my revenue to this point, then when I, even personal life, well, when I do this, then my marriage will be better. And by the way, just cards on the table. When Lynn and I started out, this was a whirlwind starting out with two young kids who got married. We're looking around with we're looking around. Thankfully, we had some good mentors who kind of guided us through that phase of life. But marriage was very, very hard, and we couldn't really, we were looking at friends who were out there, post college, getting their first jobs, doing that. Nothing against that, but they couldn't relate to us, so we really didn't have anything to look at there. Our first 5 years of marriage was very, very hard. We were having to learn a lot at once. And again, very thankful for the people that we had. But to be honest, I wasn't very good at, people talk about balance and all of this. I don't know that balance, somebody said this to me one time, I don't know that you can really be balanced in business. It should be more about blending things together. And I really agree with that, because business is ebbs and flows, right? Even after all these years, to Aaron's point, I lost a GM who had been with me for about 13 years at the time, a couple of years ago. And guess what happened? We went ebbs and flows, right? It's constant. There's not a steadiness there, I guess, so things shifted. all we can do, what Lynn and I have learned over the years, is to blend things better, to know that, hey, some seasons are just going to be mountaintop experiences, and we take advantage of the time there. And also we buckle down in those times that are a little harder. So it's, I think for anybody that
I had one leader that described it as work-life harmony.
Harmony. Yeah.
Like a good way to say it is it working for everybody? So there are times where we are imbalanced, but it's still working for my wife. It's still working for my kids. And then there have been other times, right, where it's like not working.
Yeah.
And that's when we need to go, resolve whatever needs to be resolved. Blend. I like that word too. Blend maybe some things together where my wife's coming on the work trip with me, and that allows us to have some time together or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I love that. Okay. Yeah. This has been a great chat so far, but I had an agenda before our call today of things I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And I'm just enjoying this too much. So let me skip ahead in the story a little bit, because you started Lawn Ace in 2019, grew to your first million. How long did that take? Just out of curiosity.
When we started Lawn Ace?
Yep. From 2019 to what was your first $1 million year?
The next year we did it in just over a year. We hit, I think our first year we hit a little over 750. I only know that because I kind of threw out this crazy challenge.
A little over 750 in your first year? We
did. Yeah. I threw out this challenge to my team. I said, because you got to figure, we kept our team intact. Just not in this city. So when we brought everybody back, we had an opportunity to really grow to $1 million pretty quick. What holds most people back from that, right? It's a good, skilled team, and especially a leadership team. But we had that. We just didn't have the customers. We had the opposite problem of most people. Most people are like, hey, I've got a good person here. I've got a good team. I need more customers. We've got all these customers. We've got all these people we can reach, but I don't have the team to service them. We were the exact opposite. We had the team, but not the customers. So the goal from day one was, how do we get to $1 million like tomorrow? Because we actually could. If somebody dropped 2,000 customers in our lap overnight, we could service them. We had the ability to do that.
Wow.
Probably the only time in my life that we'll have that ability to do that. So I threw out a challenge to my team. I said, hey guys, if we can hit like 750 this year, we'll go do an awesome trip somewhere. I'll let y'all pick. And I'll let you pick it right now. They picked Mexico. We found like this all-inclusive in Mexico they wanted to do. I said, cool, we hit 750. We're going down to Mexico for the week. We're going to go have some fun. And I never thought that they would hit it. I thought we'd hit like 500 or 600. They hit it, and they hit it like in like 8 or 9 months or something. It wasn't even, we weren't even pushing it. And I was like, well, I guess we're buying some plane tickets. So it was a fun
that's
trip.
Massive growth. Inevitably, our audience is asking themselves, talk about customer acquisition in that period.
Yeah.
That's a massive number of customers in a short period of time.
Also, important to remember too, like you came back to a market you were in, right? And so there was clients who knew the people a little bit, right? Sort of,
kind of.
You're gonna,
not really. So we were hoping that was actually our
That's
thought.
right. You told me that.
Even though we certainly couldn't use our customer list. That was
right.
Somebody else's property at that point, and we really didn't even mess around with that. We had given over all copies of that at the time of the sale. But our hope was still that when we opened back up, just as an independent, as Lawn Ace, our hope was that our customers, these loyal customers that we had serviced forever in Augusta, would go, oh yeah, we heard that the old Scots people are back in town and blah, blah, blah. It did not happen. I mean, it was like but it makes sense because think about it. Our customer, they really don't want to think about us too much. They have a problem.
Yeah.
We're here to solve it.
Yeah.
So in the 3 years that we were gone, they either stayed with True Green, or if they were not happy with True Green, they found somebody else. But at that point, they're gone. They're happy with somebody else. We really did have to build back from scratch, and it cost us a lot of money to do it. I mean, we were acquiring customers no different than somebody brand new to the market would have. I do think a little. I don't want to say. I mean, maybe a little of that eventually got around of like, oh, they're back. But
what were your best tactics to get clients?
So
what were your go-tos that actually worked?
Yeah. So I will say this, and this is one of those things where you can call it what you want, but I feel again though like the Lord just kind of took care of us in this way. COVID happened. So we opened so our non-compete expired October 31st of 2019. We opened up November 1st, the very next day, which is not an ideal time to open a lawn care company, but we opened up November 1st of 2019. And as you recall, in early 2020, COVID hit. So we had done a lot of marketing. So when we sold the Scott's franchises, we really didn't spend any of the money. We were really disciplined. We put some of that money into the True Green branch that we were trying to grow down there, and then the rest of the money we really just tucked away in the bank and into some investments. I spent about $30,000 on a boat, and that's the only money I spent out of everything that we got. So we tucked it away for this reason, because we wanted to come in and get to $1 million overnight. And the only way to do that is spend a lot of money on marketing. So we did things that even historically don't work in our industry: billboards, radio, TV, just anything we could do to get the brand out there so to be clear, we put a lot of money behind it. I mean, we blitzed the market.
Do you remember by chance what your cost to acquire, like what the ratio was as far as return on ad spend?
So I can give you a general idea, and I could pull. I'm a big spreadsheet nerd, so I could pull you an accurate number, but I think I can get you pretty close. So year one, it was absurd because we were doing things just for branding. We were doing billboards that you don't get a single customer off of. We were doing radio and TV that you don't get a single customer off of, or very few. So our cost was through the roof that year. I want to say we were like sitting at around $240 or so a customer, $240, $250 a customer, somewhere in there.
It's not horrible.
Terrible. It's not terrible.
Year two, we got it down sub 200. So we were about 185 a customer in year two. I cannot remember year three, we kind of started to level out. We stopped doing a lot of the branding stuff. But that's somewhere in there.
The thing that's important too, if you're listening to this, name of Kyle's company is Lawn Ace in Augusta, Georgia. I think the thing y'all did really well, and I love it, is I love your name and I love your brand. I think you have I think it's very important if you're in the lawn care, lawn fertilization game, is that you stand out as a lawn fertilization team, right? And I think you guys have a great, we had, Will Hall, Purple Hippo on here the other day. I mean, a great loud, you guys are lime green and purple, but Lawn Ace, right? Like it just, and then your tagline is we treat it like it's ours. And I just think you have a really good, brand to brand, right? Like to market and to go out there. So like you could have spent a lot of this money and not had a great looking brand, or might not have resonated as well. So I think you did a lot of things right. And then you had the money. And I think the thing I'm hearing as you say this is, if you spend, it's almost one of those things with marketing where we know this. If you dip your toe in it and you try to like halfway do it, it's going to fail. And you sometimes, if you go all in with a great strategy, a great brand, you probably have a chance of getting that cost down a little bit more, right? I'm not a big gambler, but if I go to Vegas, I like to play craps. And if you go to the craps table and it's a $25 table, for example, so you got to bet about $25 a thing, you can't go there with $100. You'll be out in no time. But if you go to that table with $1,000, you're going to stay around a little bit longer. And so like, in marketing, it's either better to go all in or go all out. Like just, and that's kind of what I think, Kyle, you learned through that. The lesson you probably learned is because you went so heavy, it really paid off in a pretty good acquisition cost. You also had a really good brand. But that's kind of what I was just hearing from that. I don't know if Dan, you picked up on that too.
No, yeah, I like that thought. I think there's a lot. I love the story in part because it shows the potential. if you do have a little capital, of what can happen very quickly. And that's a very impressive story. Maybe the fastest to 750 that I've heard in the first year. That's pretty impressive. So
we didn't talk about profit though. So
well,
you wouldn't be impressed by our profit.
Let's get to that because, I think when you and Aaron first met, when was that? 2022, 3?
24.
24,
that late. Mm-hmm. So things were humming, but yet, we chatted before the call. You said I was feeling burnout. My office manager was feeling burnout. Like everything on the outside looked like success. This is Aaron's quote. It's like, being an entrepreneur is like riding a tiger through town. Everyone says, look, he's riding a tiger. And then you're sitting on the tiger going, holy crap, I'm riding a tiger.
Yeah.
So you were riding the tiger, right? You were riding the tiger, but it wasn't maybe magical. Like, what was missing? What was working, and then what was missing?
Well, look, I mean, everybody, and we've talked about this, and you have to caution anybody who's listening to this or whatever. We go to conferences. We'll go to conferences. You turn to social media, to everybody that wants to tell you how to do everything, and they're an expert on it and all this. But what are they talking about, right? Like gross revenue. Oh, how much? Oh, I grew 12% this year. I grew 15% this year. I'm doing $3 million. I'm a lawn care company doing $7 million in revenue. But we're not. I never hear. I've been to a lot of conferences over the year. I go to some industry specific stuff every year. I talk to a lot of people in our industry, and what do we always hear? How many customers do you have, and what's your revenue? And it really does not. What does that matter? Like, what would what does that matter when you're doing when you're taking a loss or you're hitting a 3 or 4% margin or something like that? But nobody sits there and goes, well, how profitable are you? What's your, and again, Aaron has really just been a huge blessing and asset to us in this, as a set of eyes who's not in that company every day, to sit there and go, well, hey, let's look at a couple things here. Like, he identified quickly that, some issues around our labor costs and some other things, some cost of goods, materials, some things where, we don't sit there and go, ooh, but my labor cost is down 1.5% this year, or my cost of goods is down 2% this year. I never hear people talk like that. But aren't those the numbers that really matter? Or my bottom line is that everybody's talking top line revenue,
yep.
and everybody's yep. impressed by it. I grew by $500,000 this year. Well, I don't know. Maybe it cost me $750,000 to get there. You don't know. You're not asking. We're not asking the right questions here, right? So my caution to people is don't get enamored by that when you're at conferences or on social media and go, man, he's got a $7 million lawn care company. That may be great, or it may not be.
I don't care about revenue, and I don't care about net profit until I have context around those. But you cannot BS your gross margin and what it costs you to make $1. So if you can't produce $1 for less than 35 cents in labor and material, then I really don't care about your revenue. Yeah. If your revenue is $7 million, but you spend 50 cents on $1 to produce $1, mm-hmm. I wouldn't trade you for all the tea in China for that. I just don't care.
What's the old saying? You never go broke making a profit.
Right.
And that's kind of how I feel about it. It's like, as long as those good numbers are there, we can go up and down revenue wise, and it's okay. Like, it takes all the stress out of the business. Takes all the stress out of it. I was chatting with a business owner. They're behind, I don't know, they're a bigger company. They're behind $250,000 up to this point in the quarter. But their cost of goods is right where it wants to be. Their net margin's right where it wants to be. We're okay. We're not stressing that big loss. If we were running at the red line and we're $250,000 behind, we're firing people. You know what I mean? Like, it's a big deal. And so I love that perspective. And so when you met Aaron, you kind of turned your attention away from grow, and a little bit more towards grow bottom line.
Yeah. In fact,
sorry. Well, I was going to say, really the attention turned to, we need to figure out this team, because there was some, we've really done more finance work in the last 6 to 12 months, and the first 12 months was really like, let's focus on this team because we're lacking. You had a key operations guy who got burnt out and left the company, and you guys were $2+ million in fert and weed control, great brand. I mean, Kyle's a great leader. And I think the thing that Kyle, I just remember the first call we were on, Kyle, and I said, I remember getting on that call going, how can we help this guy? Like, I think I need to learn some stuff from him. He's got this some $1 million fert company. He's very polished and then it dawned on me, it's like, oh, this leadership stuff that we teach, he's never really heard some of this before in this manner. And I was a little worried about, could we really help Kyle or not? Because he had such a great company. And I sort of bought into the revenue was great and all these things. And by the way, Dan, we've had people say, well, how can they help us? We're doing more revenue than any business they've worked with before, whatever. And the reality is, if it's not a revenue game, if you couldn't sustain that revenue if you don't start doing these leadership things, right? And so that's really, as we met, that's why we decided to work together. Is we teach leadership rhythms, and so I'll let Kyle kind of take it from there. But that's kind of how I remember. I'm wondering if we can help him. He's wondering if we can help. If we can help him, and how we can help him. And that's where we found out. That's where you were lacking, and that operations guy had left you, and you were feeling really overwhelmed and wondering, like, do I need to exit this, or what do I do here, right? So.
Talk about the change in seats and systems and structures that Aaron kind of brought to the table. Because I do think there's this, I don't know if we call it the Saint complex or whatever, where we get some really loyal players and we just beat the tar out of them because our systems and our structure and our growth even is just, they're carrying the whole load and they keep sacrificing. But at some point you kind of get to your breaking point a little bit. So what did Aaron kind of add to the table there that allowed you to kind of shift out of that martyr syndrome or Saint complex or whatever we call it?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And isn't a word that comes to mind with how we do things now since Aaron's been involved is sustainability, right? Because even if you've got somebody that is just a workhorse that is willing to let you beat the tar out of them and they want it, but a human being can only take so much. And I'm the same way. I'm like, put it on me, right? Like, there's nothing. I love working. Put it on me. It doesn't matter. At a certain point, I'm going to break. It doesn't matter who you are. We're human beings, right? So if there's no system, it's not gonna work. It's just white knuckling through things. But that you can only white knuckle so long. And I have been very, very fortunate over the years to have people who are willing to white knuckle through some stuff with me and really willing to push through things. And look, sometimes that's small business. Sometimes that's just required. And we're upfront about that. I mean, me too. I've lost more nights of sleep than I can count. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. Probably anybody that's listening gets that. That's okay. There are still going to be nights that I don't sleep well. I hope they come less and less. Part of that's just small business. There are good things you'll get with big business and negatives. There are good things with small and business and negatives. But I think you said a key word there, which is seats. And before I started working with Aaron, I really never. In fact, what kind of the old timers, so to speak, would always tell you would say, hey, find a person and grow your business around them, or find some key people and grow your business around them. Aaron's taught me, no, you need to find some key seats and fill those seats. And I really didn't understand the concept at first, even though we were in business almost 20 years, because I have been very, very fortunate with some great people. The problem is, and we have found it out over the last couple of years as people have just naturally aged, is that when those key people that you've built things around, they've kind of built their own system, right? If you haven't built it for them, they've kind of built their own system. They've kind of created their own seat. And then when they're not there any longer, that vacant seat, you're trying to fill a vacant seat with a human that doesn't exist anymore, versus creating seats. Hey, this is what Aaron would correct me he still does sometimes. Like, he would correct me all the time when I would start going, well, so-and-so's job. He's like, that job. that seat. Like we have a seat that a GM sits in. We have a seat that a service manager sits in. My service manager's name's Justin. That is not Justin's job. Justin's sitting in that seat. And hopefully someday Justin's going to be sitting in a higher seat and somebody else will fill that seat. But it's not Justin's position. It's not Justin's. That's just the seat. I'm sitting in the seat too. We got that org chart out. Almost 20 years in business, I didn't have an org chart. And yes, did we have one that kind of existed up here somewhere? Sure. But when you put it down and see it and go, hey, these are the seats. And by the way, we spent a lot of time. I mean, for the first 12 to 15, I would say for the first year, give or take, it was all operational, right? Like we were good at putting numbers on the board, but we were bad about that bottom line. We were not good with the bottom line, and we were not good operationally. We were white knuckling through some things, and we did it good enough for long enough that we still existed all these years later, but it wasn't healthy. You know, it wasn't
That's a
healthy.
good word.
Mm-hmm. I remember go ahead. So I remember the first annual meeting. Kyle had a team, keep in mind, that had been with him from the Scots days. They sell, the team stays together for 3 years. They come back, they scale this company up for about 3 to 4 years. So this is a pretty seasoned team. And Tammy, who's, kind of your right-hand person, right? She's been there through thick and thin. I learned today, actually, that Tammy was there at Scott's when you got there. So Tammy's kind of been there longer than you. And I remember Tammy going into the annual meeting, Kyle told me, he said, listen, Tammy's probably going to retire, 2-4 years, somewhere in that range, right? Hopefully she'll stay with us through the first mission, which for us is 3 years. And as we're going into the annual meeting, kind of preparing for that, we go through the annual meeting, we set the purpose, the values of the company on paper. We set a mission. As a matter of fact, I've got it in front of me. The mission of that team right now that they're still in is to build the leadership team, internal systems and processes, and learn to scale a predictable client acquisition by 10/31/27. So we're still in that mission right now. And, we're not talking about growing the company. We're talking about building foundation. Think of the foundation of a skyscraper, right? Like, man, they'll go down in the hole for a year or 18 months and you won't see anything. You're like, what are they doing there? And then all of a sudden one day you start seeing this stuff come out of the ground. And that's kind of what Kyle's doing right now. He's building that foundation. But we go through this. The second day we set the annual and quarterly priorities. And we have this roadmap and this game plan. And I remember as we're all kind of have our bags in our hand, we're at the door about to leave, and I'm going to drive back to Charlotte. They're going to go home. That time, Dan, you've been through 2 days of this. For a lot of the people in the room, it's kind of exhausting mentally. And Tammy looked at Kyle and said, Kyle, if you do these things, I don't think I need to retire. And I remember thinking, oh, that's awesome. Because now, if Tammy wants to retire, what Tammy was telling us is, I don't want to retire. I don't think I can do this job anymore. And she was a very elevated admin, and that title doesn't do her justice, but she ran the office and the company and everything. And what's really cool is today, Tammy's the general manager of the company. And so this person went from, I'm ready to retire, from this very successful company, this great leader. Kyle's a great person, and Lynn, his wife, is awesome. They're very thoughtful. They take care of their team. They've got a beautiful facility. Like, they've got a beautiful office that you sit in. I mean, it's a place you'd want to go to work. And, they pay their team well. One of the things I've had to challenge Kyle on a little bit here is, Kyle, kind of overpaying some positions a little bit, and we need to get some things in line here financially. But, Tammy was wanting out of that because it had become unsustainable. And Kyle used that word earlier. And so our whole focus has been not that we don't care about the people, not that we don't talk about the names of the people, but like, we've got to build systems so that these people can thrive. And one of the things I'm most proud of right now for Kyle and his team is we had our biweekly check-in call today earlier, and I was like, where's Tammy? And I had forgotten. And then she was like, oh, Tammy's in Key West this week. It's April 22nd in Augusta, Georgia, lawn care company with 3,700, 4,000 clients. And the general manager is in Key West for the week. And that's success. That's a company that I would be proud
Kyle's
to stand up.
And Kyle's on our podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to say that, and that's the win. That it's, like, could you do that anytime? Sure, and it would all be it'd be a dumpster fire, and that's not the case. Things because of this work that's been put in, because of what we've been able to accomplish here, she's able to feel good about going and doing that. And to be honest with you, as much as I hated to hear that, a couple of years ago that she was moving towards retirement, I do care about her a lot. She has. I can't repay what she's done for me over the years. In a way, on a personal level, I was grateful to hear it, because I was like, I saw it for what it was too. And I'm like, I don't want her going through this every day. It was always kind of going back to that first employee ever, right? It was like, man, I want to create a place. And for a lot of years we were able to. It had gotten to the point where I was like, ugh, I don't know if she likes coming here every day. I don't know if I like coming here every day. Like, and we don't always have to like the work we do every day necessarily. We're going to have good and bad days, but those should be seasons. Those shouldn't be ongoing. And it really did my heart a lot of good when she said, like, actually, if we did this, I'd kind of enjoy it again. Or, when she told me, like, hey, we booked this Key West trip, I'm like, man, I'm like, yes. That is the allowing and by the way, she's thriving in this role. Like, I couldn't be any happier. She is thriving in this role that I don't think she ever considered before. And I didn't consider before because we never looked at the seats. But when we started looking at the seats and what we need out of this seat, out of this GM seat, she fits every bit of it, But again, I never looked at it that way.
I think the audience needs to understand too, right now, they had licked the revenue game. They had licked the client game. They were great. They have 1,800. Are you over 2,000 reviews yet? You're like, you have the most reviews anybody knows.
We're closing in on 1,900, yeah.
Okay. I mean, 4.95, 4.9 rating. I mean, you guys, they were checking all the boxes that if we went to the Real Green Conference or the Service Autopilot Conference or the whatever conference and stood up, Kyle would have the crown on his head and be marching around the room like he's but at the same time, the leadership team was failing and was struggling. And also Kyle came to me and said, man, if I can't fix this, I'm selling. And I was like, ugh. And Dan, our goal is like build a business so daggum valuable you can't afford to sell it. And if you sell it, it's because you've decided you have a bigger purpose in life and you want to go do something bigger or bolder, or your retirement age and it's time to go, spend time somewhere else, But Kyle wasn't any of those. He would have been selling, and Kyle could have sold his company and he would have gotten some good money for it. But when and if Kyle sells his company today, he's going to get more. He's going to be more valuable because he's actually got a team in place that investor would want to inherit. And they'll figure out during due diligence what they've got. Do I have just some good clients that I'm going to buy, or do I actually have a leadership team I'm buying? And today they're going to find that. And Kyle, has told me on multiple occasions, he's like, yeah, I don't want to sell today. Like this is I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And so I think it's just important for our audience to hear that, if you're struggling right now and you think, oh, I get to $1 million, it'll be taken care of. Or I get to 2 million. If I just get to 2 million, all my problems will go away. If I just had 1,000 clients, if I had 150 reviews or 1,000 reviews, like that's not the answer to a successful business. It is a part of it, right? We need to do those things. But you better start understanding the people game and the leadership game and the leadership rhythms that are important. And the reason I knew we could help Kyle when we met is I said, I get to just teach him the leadership rhythms. He's an amazing leader. He's going to thrive in this stuff. And we talk about Dan, taking cases that we know we can win. This was a home run for us because we said, if Kyle do this work because he's disciplined, and he's been very disciplined to the work, and he's excelled at the work, and so it's a lot of fun. when that
it's
happens.
A lot of fun
right?
to be a part of this kind of a story. Kyle, give us a final thought for our audience. We've taken more of your time than we probably should have, but it's just so, I don't know, maybe it's the slow pace of the South that's creeping in here.
There you go.
But tell us, give a final thought to our audience, and then we'll wrap it up.
I've got a sign on my wall. One of the things on it says "Be a lifelong learner," and that is one thing that I have a ton of faults. There are a couple things that I consistently have done well and haven't lost my way on, and one of them is that. So I see a lot of people that think that they've, quote, made it or whatever, or how can that person help me or anything like that. That is one thing that I don't believe in. Like, I don't care what, if I had a $20 million company tomorrow, I'd still have somebody like Aaron in my corner, like it's because it's still the same thing, right? Like we can't, I don't know anybody who really, like, you hear this term like self-made. I don't know anybody who's successful in really any sense of the word, not just financially, personally, financially, spiritually, anything that's truly self-made. So my biggest regret is not surrounding myself with people like Aaron, people like that sooner. And again, on a personal and a professional level. I mean, like, I feel like Aaron's really challenged me on just on the personal side as well. This isn't just about making more money. That's been nice, but really just I really would encourage anybody to invest in yourself in that way. And look, there are a lot of people out there that can afford certain things and can't afford certain things or whatever. But there's some way. And by the way, you guys, they didn't ask me to do this, but shameless plug anyways. I mean, you guys make you're accessible to people of all kinds of different phases of business. So whether it's you guys or somebody else, like I really think that, I will say that because I think that it is important to know that when you have somebody behind you that can come in unemotionally and say, look, I'm going to just tell you the truth about things here. Somebody who knows what they're doing. And that's important these days because there are a lot of people out there that don't. When you've got a team like you guys that really know what you're doing and can point somebody in the right direction and say, look, Aaron says this to me all the time. He said, I'm not going to fix your problems. I can point out some things to you, and then, it's going to be up to you to do something about them. And that's exactly what he's done. And we've had that accountability there in that. And then we go and I guess my final thing with it would be like, just be willing to do the hard work. And the hard work is not getting out there pulling a hose. It might be sometimes, depending where you're at in the business. The hard work is keeping the right people in the right seats. Because I can tell you, over the last year and a half, I have had almost 20 years in business. And the last year and a half, I have had some of the hardest times, some of the hardest conversations, some of the most sleepless nights as we've been fixing this, as we've been working on plugging these holes in the ship. It has not been pleasant. Aaron has not come in here and made this process pleasant. So if anybody thinks they're going to hire somebody like you guys or anybody else to go fix it and it's going to be an easy, fun process and they're going to be jet setting around the country doing it, that's just not it. Like, you got to be willing to go do the work, right? Like, so I think my overall thought is, like, find somebody who knows what they're doing, who can really be that mentor, that coach to you, and then be willing to do the work. And it's not either or. I think it's really got to be both. If you're willing to go, if I'm willing to work with Aaron, but then I'm not willing to go do the things that he tells me to do, I'm wasting my time and my money. I'm wasting his time. It's not a good fit. I think it's got to be both. And I'm grateful that our paths have crossed, and for just kind of how that all that happens. So
here, Kyle.
I say find the mentor, do the work.
Here. Find the mentor, do the work, keep learning. It's a beautiful message. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. And Kyle, I mean, I feel like this podcast wanted to turn into 4 podcasts, so maybe we'll have you back in future episodes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to Lawn Care CEO Podcast. No matter where you are on this journey, as always, go do more good.